Ever feel like you're doing everything right in your sales process, but nothing's actually closing?
This week, Diyar shares his one thing, focusing on the right data, and why some sales just never go anywhere, no matter how good your offer is.
We get into those deals that drag on for weeks or months. I'll get back to you conversations.
And how spotting the right signals early can completely change how your sales actually moves forward.
This is What One Thing.
Diyar, let's get straight into this. Your what one thing is focusing on the data, but I'm really curious, what was happening in the business that led you up to this realization, this light bulb moment of getting to your what one thing?
Okay. So when you've been doing sales for a long time, which I have in many different capacities, you spot things in sales cycles that start to become common patterns. And the scenario you can often find yourself in is you have a value proposition. You know the customer would benefit from it, but for some reason, it's just not happening. You're stuck in this sort of perpetual, I'll get back to you, haven't got it to the top of the list yet, give me a call back next week. And I realized that that wasn't just relevant to me, it was being in the business that I'm in. It was also the same thing that was happening to my customers from the being a lead generation business, what we were passing them. You know, they couldn't question the fit, but for some reason, the fit wasn't squeezing in a deal, if that makes sense. Again, the luxury of doing something on scale and with a lot of time, you have the ability to see patterns that perhaps wouldn't emerge if you're doing it on a small scale basis. So the deals that did close, there was often common patterns that were beyond just the basic alignment, right, of my product is the right product for you. And they would often be much more connected to intent triggers within the individual themselves, as opposed to their business. So where they were as a person. So it could have been as simple as their proximity to an existing customer, how well they knew somebody that already worked with me, for example, right? So the validity of my service, or the equivalent of your mate next door buying a BMW and you feeling like your mini metro now needs to be upgraded, the pressure of that, right, was an influence. It could be that they've just started a new job and they're there to make a change for themselves. It could be that they used to work for an ex-customer. It could be the business has just received some seed funding. It could be one of their major competitors has just hired an amazing sales director that they know is going to go hell for leather into the market and give their competitor an advantage. If those factors in the data presented themselves, suddenly the sales cycles were completely different. You weren't pushing against a wall as such of kind of like, yes, there's a basic fit there. What I have come to call a single tick logic in the data. Like, yeah, obviously I would make sense for you, but there's nothing more. There's nothing driving it that's naturally moving it. So you then, as a salesperson, can expand a heck of a lot of energy in playing in the wrong data set. And you can actually start doing damage because your what was actually a nice fit, you then overblow it. And the prospect doesn't help a lot of the time because they'll keep dragging it on, right? Yeah, and equally they're resenting this game of cat and mouse, but they also are in the same boat as you go, yeah, it does kind of make sense, but I can't bring myself to buy this thing, right? If the data logic is right, the natural momentum of the data will get the deal done. And I'll give you an example. We took on a client recently, and I can come back a bit here. So that was the first observation. The second observation is don't make a market. That's kind of part of the same data logic, right? In terms of moving beyond just a single tick logic into at least two ticks. If they're already spending money on something just like you do, that's a tick. It makes sense, right? They've already parted with money, and it's a really simple one. But a lot of businesses don't do it. They'll just be like, well, no, because they haven't got a service like mine. They need it. So we'll focus on people who haven't got a service like mine. It's actually the wrong logic in most cases because you're educating people, educating them, not selling to them, which is just long sales cycles. Whereas if they've already spent money on lead gen or accountancy or managed IT services, they already get on a basic level, they need something. And now you're selling against the situation with an opportunity for an upturn of improvement rather than trying to get someone to part with a couple of quid that they've never parted with before. So that's another part of what I would call data logic. So for me, I now surf in the data waves of people that spend money on stuff like I do, or whatever my clients do already, and have an intent trigger of some description that's going to mean that if you get in front of them, the speed of that sales cycle is much more likely to be favorable without having to do any jiggery pokery of like amazing sales present. It just happens. And I've
So,
got scenarios of 24-hour turnarounds, £1,000 deals with the right data logic. Just bang, bang, done.
so if we reel you a step back,
Yes.
are you finding you were spending a lot of time trying to generate leads with people that weren't coming through and you were getting noise? How did you have that data in the first place to be able to look into that? And what drove you to really sit down that night or that evening or that day and say, I'm going to dig deep into my data because something doesn't look right or things are going too well? Or what was the relationship there?
I have to say, again, probably why I'm actually relatively useful is because of the scale that I've done this on. I'm not going to say that I'm a great analyst because I'm not. I could, repeatedly make the same mistake 50 times and probably not notice, as my wife would comment. If you're doing something on scale, that is one of the advantages you have. Is you've just got so much information. And, we're not just doing this for ourselves. We're doing it for many, many clients, contacting thousands and thousands of people. And I'd say that it holds up at lead gen phase all the way to deal close phase. But where it really hits home is at deal close phase. Yeah. So you can get yourself in the door with probably a single tick on data logic. Yeah. Like, I don't know, I'm a local accountant. It's near tax return. You've just done this year. You're doing year end. You want a second opinion, something like that. Right. That could get you in the door. It won't get your door in the door as easily as I notice you've just started a new job, where you came from before, used to use my accountancy. Will you be reviewing accountants? Do you want to have a chat with me? That's going to be a better, easier pitch than do you need an accountant, right, to get in the door. But the impact of it really is when the money comes in. That you'll just see the thing close quicker because the barriers aren't there on a personal level or on a situational level to stop the deal happening. They're naturally moving with change. They're naturally going in that direction. I don't think there was any great epiphany moment. It was just the observation that I could meet with the same pitch, very similar people, and get a deal done in 24 hours, or the same kind of profile would take 2 years to ever go anywhere, or in most cases never go anywhere. It just would be like, that sounds great, yeah, exactly what we need, and it just doesn't go anywhere. So I also had the luxury of working with businesses like Phil's, where I've been down lots of avenues in terms of what the right data logic is. You start to see the guidance you got in the first place was possibly wrong from the client. A lot of the time, the client would guide, well, people that don't have managed services at the moment, we can go in there, or we could do this, we could do that. You start spotting that those sales cycles just go on forever.
I think that this one thing, I think it's actually bigger than you think. Yeah, because the thing that I'm picturing at the moment is I've not thought about my best clients and what are the real things that match between those, the people that we can provide the most value to, the people that we link up with and we think we've managed to drive this business forward. How did you come up with what the linking factors were on your data? How did you make a decision? I'm going to look whether people are old or young. Are you allowed to say that? I don't know. I'm going to have a look whether people are turning over 5 million or 2 million. How did you decide on what your criteria would
Exactly
be
what you
for
said, Phil.
linking up data?
I looked at my client profiles. I looked at the outcomes I'd achieved for them. I looked at the situations they were in terms of what their aspirations were as a business, what the climate was with them. A lot of my clients are trying to scale up for sale, right? So they're trying to go to that journey. They've all been burnt by trying lots of failed avenues around sales growth. Spent hundreds of thousands on failed attempts at trying to make something work. And they're typically not businesses that have complex marketing functions, right? That's what I concluded from my client base. And so therefore the impact of adding a new contract for them was huge. And the impact of,
how did you get to that conclusion about that client base though, Diyar? What did you go to your existing customers and ask them questions? Did you ask them questions about the leads that you generated for them? Or how did you get to that data point? I'm just thinking, if I'm maybe an accountant called Corbar, do I phone up my existing clients and ask them questions, or do I analyze it myself, or what methodology did you use for that?
It's a really good point, and I have to be honest. I hid and was scared to ask for about 3 years what the actual value of what I did was. Really shied away from it and sort of hid behind I generate leads and I'm really good at that. And I didn't really, if I'm being honest, want to understand how the client's business worked. I knew they kept paying me, and I knew that the value of their contracts were pretty high and they had long stickiness. I knew that was there, but I was kind of scared to go that step further and just ask for the stories. And that was transformative to actually go through that exercise and understand from their perspective what the value of what I did was, and understand a bit more about how their business works. That allowed me to, I guess in many cases, puff my chest out a bit and go, do you know what, man? Actually, I'm not so bad. I've generated quite a lot of money for these people. I might think, gosh, you've taken quite a bit of money, but actually the win for them is great in most cases. So you start, but it's a scary thing to ask. But you do, once you kind of work that out, as you alluded, Phil, just refine it inwards as to the sorts of people that would be interested in what you do. But I can't stress enough, taking the logic beyond just you're the sort of business that should buy my service and trying to find an angle on a personal level with the buyer. There will be patterns. There will be patterns in businesses. It could just be simply, we did one with a managed services campaign, Phil, with small businesses hiring people locally. That was you're local, tick. You're hiring, double tick. You're the MD. Is it starting to, excuse my French, pee you off? All this onboarding nonsense, offboarding, onboarding, is it starting to creak a little bit? That's the question, not do you need managed services? Is it starting to creak? I noticed this about you. I know you're a fit for me as a business, but I noticed something about you and an observation specifically on the data logic. Do you agree with that problem?
So if you're a business listening and
Yes.
it's all resonating because we've all got to generate leads, what's the process so if you were talking to me, for example,
Yeah.
and I wasn't in a position to take up your services at this point in time, what are the things that I can do for myself to start building this data set and understanding how I push sales forward in my business?
Okay. So I'd start with make the world small. Okay. Don't go down the trap of I could sell to anyone in the UK angle. You can't. You might be able to via referral, but if you're trying to just approach them cold, you need to make the elevator quite small, right? If you're at some massive elevator where there's like miles and miles of distance between you and them, they're not going to hear you. So you've got to make your world quite small and start with a single tick logic that makes sense to you. So single tick, it's basic common sense that I'll get. If I put that forward to you as why you might want to work with me, my logic's pretty relatively tight. I've got 10 clients in recruitment and I'm based here. So I could be a local specialist partner for you. That's a single tick, right? Then you probably will end up with a list of maybe 600 to 1,000 businesses. Don't be scared of that. You don't need that many. And then you just want to layer on top things that might happen on a personal level within those businesses, changes of people, financial circumstances that you might be able to see, headcount, office move, right? Layer that on top, and those are what I would call your second and third ticks. Watch them. It's not that hard. You just can check in on stuff like LinkedIn. Have they added headcount? Have they got a new CFO in? What's going on?
And that's actually a really good point to make. So because I was just going to ask, when you talk about you might end up with a list of 1,000 businesses.
Yes.
If you're completely clueless and you've never done this before in life, where do you find that information? Is LinkedIn the best place to do that, or?
There's all sorts of tools, and this is where it starts to become, this isn't a plug, it's just a reality of life outsource versus do yourself, right? We spend a small fortune on data and we can centrally buy that and allow you all to benefit from it. But if you were to do it yourself, ultimate DIY is go on LinkedIn, build a little list manually, Google it, you could do that, right? You could challenge yourself to do 50 a week and then set trackers up on LinkedIn. So you'll need LinkedIn Sales Navigator, trackers up, any new appointments in those companies, any new headcount recruitment things going on in those companies, you can set trackers up. Sales Navigator, I think, is about 70, 80 quid a month. You could do that, right? That could be as far as you go with it. But if you want to streamline that whole effort, you've got tools like Cognizant, Apollo, Clay, data scraping and enrichment tools that are out there in the market. You've got financial ones as well that will give you sort of, you've got Company's House, which is public information.
Yeah.
You can pull directors' names off Company House. So when I started, and I am the most untechnical man, not in the world, but I definitely the top 20, everything was manual. Like, I'm lucky to have a business partner who's AI CTO type that has taken the basic creative concepts and streamlined them. But the logic was always there. When I was 19 years old, I was calling people up, pitching them a personal situation, not a product. I never pitched products. I pitched stories, right? You're trying to get here. I think looking at you, you just started a new job. You're trying to make change. Looking at you, just got some investment. I presume you're trying to scale. So you're going to need this.
Okay.
That's how I've always done it. So that basic story you could do manually. Like, you could go and just go, right, I'm going to do my single tick logic. I'm going to build that out. And then I'm going to set my trackers on there so I can try and achieve a double or triple tick logic as to why I'm approaching them. And then that's the first basis of it, right? Now, if you get the right data tools, you can open up the channels of ways you can reach them, which is the second point, because every game you're playing is about being noticed. If you've got the right data logic and you're getting noticed in your outreach, you're going to get business. Full stop.
Okay.
No way you can't.
So,
Yes.
controversially then, if you feel like you're doing all those things, but it's not happening, what would you advise somebody to do?
Look at your data logic and look at your total reply rates. So the truth will be in one of those two things. Your data logic is wrong. So if you're pitching product, you're probably in trouble. You need to be pitching a story that's about them, not you. So that's the first thing. If your data logic is allowing for that, then you're kind of on the right path. And it really can be as simple as, in the world of someone like Phil, I expect you'd value the input of a local hands-on partner that's all about the personal touch for this kind of stuff, because it's really important as a business to really get that proper advice rather than dealing with the big corporate nondescript kind of setup. That could be a simple logic, right? That will appeal to a certain group of people, not I'm selling managed services.
I love this. And what I'm hearing, and I'm going to try and put us in a step plan here. What I'm hearing is, number one, go to existing customers and understand the story or the journey that they were on that got them to you. Once you've got that, then look for equal identifiers between your customers. So actually 3 customers have now said to me, we just recruited 3 new staff and we realized it was a mess picking up laptops from Currys, whatever. Now you've got your tick boxes and you've got the journey. Now you're looking for, okay, let's play bingo on LinkedIn or whatever tool we want and match people to those datas. And I love we had no idea at the start of this call what 3-tick system was, but now I'm completely on board on the 3-tick system. If people have enjoyed listening to this, Diyar, and think, yeah, I'm loving this, I understand this logic, what is your ideal customer profile and how would they get in touch with you?
A high lifetime value for an acquisition is the main thing. £30,000 north for a lifetime value of a new client. Beyond that, we've got clients selling everything really. So I'm not, that side of it, as long as the maths works and they've got some money to invest in growing their business, then, we're happy to have a chat. We don't bite. And I actually enjoy this stuff. So I don't mind if you buy from me or not. I genuinely like coming up with the ideas. So that be that. Just one point I'd like to make back to Haley's original question, just to finish off the story on it. I think the second thing is your reply rates. Because if your reply rates are not around 20% cumulatively, right? So if you've got your story and you're pitching your stories out to your bingo groups, and you're getting a 1% reply rate, you've got a problem. So you're either not using enough channels, you're just using email, and that could be diagnostically your emails just don't even get past spam, which is incredibly common, right? That's an art in its own right. Right, syntax to change the message, how long the email can be, how many you can send an hour. That one move could suddenly move your email reply up to 5-8%. If just by doing that. Are you using direct mail? Are you doing something eye-catching? Now think about it. If you've made the world small, in most businesses it's less than 1,000. It's probably 600, 600, right? If you spent £6 on each of them, £8, £10 a year, you can actually do something pretty cool. Given the fact that each of them is worth 30,000 quid or more to you, think that way, you really should be. But suddenly, I don't just have to send a spammy email. I could send them a personalized mug with a handwritten note. I could send a skydiver if they're worth enough money to land on top of their office. I don't know. I've had some crazy ideas. I could do whatever, if the value is high enough, then it's an exciting game. So spend your marketing budget on that. Do something fun rather than cheap and massy that no one's going to. So the reply rate will tell you everything about your strategy, because if no one's replying, they're not noticing you, they're not impressed, you're never going to win. And I can say this without plugging too much here. Our average reply rate is 20 to 25%. And that is because we use every single channel and we spend money on a small list of people for our clients. And myself, we do it ourselves. We'll spend thousands of pounds a month on outreach, because every one of those contracts is, on average, my average client value is about 42,000 lifetime. So I close 1 in 3. That's my stats. So it's easy. It doesn't stress me out, because mathematically I'm in an okay position. Yeah. So anyway, those are the metrics. Yeah. Look at your data. Have you got a decent story? And are you getting replies from what you're doing to tell that story? I've talked way too much. Sorry.
No.
Love it.
It's all really good stuff, though, and people need it. And people don't know. If you're not in the world of sales and lead generation, I suppose, you don't know what you don't know.
Can I just tell you one parable? This is actually a decent parable. I think it's decent. Might be shit. So, right. So when I first set my business up, I was ridiculous. Right? I had this business I set up. It's called Cheeky Gorgonzola. And I used to go into the meetings. I got bought by where I work now with a cheese board, right? And I'd set the company up based on the fact I liked the name Cheeky Gorgonzola. There was no link to what I did, so I had to create one. Anyway, I think it was something about the Gorgonzola being a distinctive cheese that found its way onto many plates, salads and pizzas somehow via good marketing or something. I can't remember what it was. But I used to this parable about a scenario I was in JD Sports. You go into JD Sports, or was it Sports Direct? Sorry, Sports Direct, and bought some stuff, right? And you go to, it was the era of, they were always giving you away random stuff when you went in there. Like, do you want Smiths did it as well. Do you want a massive bar of chocolate while you buy your newspaper? No, it's not really. Right. And JD Sports. So this kid behind the JD Sports counter, I'd gone in and bought some shoes, I think. And I had some other shopping with me. Yeah. That I bought for my wife. So I got to the JD Sports till with the pair of trainers, whatever I bought. And the guy pings it through. And then he goes, oh, do you want to buy a ridiculously big bag? Obviously a manufacturing error of it, right? Ridiculous. This beast of a bag for £2. Because we like being incentivized to sell them. And I said, but I then took the chance to sort of lecture the guy slightly. I said, to be honest, dude, and this is back down to storytelling. If you'd actually looked at me and told me a story, dude, it looks like you're carrying around a lot of stuff, man. Like, I can see that you've been a nice guy. You've gone to John Lewis and you've not wanted to pay for a bag there. So you're carrying the birthday present you bought your wife. And you've also got some bananas and this and that. What about a massive bag that you could put all your stuff in? That'd help you out, wouldn't it? It's only £2. I would have bought it. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Right. That's storytelling. That's storytelling. And my instant go away, I'm not buying your massive ugly Sports Direct bag, would have been replaced with, dude, that's actually a pretty good idea. Yeah, go on then. Yeah, £2, that's good value. And that's selling. If that makes sense.
It definitely does, yeah. I think there's definitely a skill to it, which I don't have. How do people connect with you if they would like to follow up?
LinkedIn. I'm happy to book in a half-hour just brainstorming session, ideas stuff with you, just to give you some ideas. And if you want to, I won't pitch. Just tell me what your situation is. I think we've had a chat, Hayley, in the past. So it's just I genuinely enjoy it. I genuinely like coming up with ideas that may be terrible, may be quite good. But yeah, if you feel like you want to see about the ticks and where your data's at, where your story's at, and all that kind of stuff, you can road test it on me.
Yeah.
You want, and I'll tell you if I think it's any good. If that's got any value to you, then there's the offer.
That's great. Thank you very much. So probably after marketing, sales and lead generation is probably my next most dislike topic. So this episode and conversation with Diyar was really interesting for me and eye-opening. But before we get to that, Phil, what did you think?
Yeah, it really put a pin on it for me in regards to niching, I think, because we're always told niche. And we always try and think about, okay, what industry, what kind of businesses, where can we provide the most value? But what really struck me about Diyar was he was talking about, okay, which businesses close with us, because that effectively is our niche. If we can get 3 or 4 tick boxes where we know, okay, if this person's in this situation or they've been doing this and they're looking for this, then that's my ideal client and I can get there and provide value straight away. That's actually who I'm looking for. And then the second piece, which is always around, I think somebody said people don't buy, they buy journeys or they buy stories. And I think we all tell ourselves stories, and it's working out what story or what journey is the customer going on where they come to us, and how do we then, attract that kind of customer and really help them out. What was your thoughts, Hayley?
Well, I loved the fact that a salesperson was using data to really help them get on the way with sales, because obviously data is a great thing and usually the answer does lie in data. So I thought that was really interesting because actually, having worked with sales teams and things for many years, nobody's ever actually approached it and explained it to me in that way before, which I thought was really, really interesting. And actually, you can do something with that because the data says this. So if we do more of that or less of that, it kind of makes sense to me. So I thought that was really interesting. And the great thing with data is that anybody can use it. You don't necessarily need to be a great salesperson or great at sales to interpret that and start dialing things up or down. I think the bit that I was in awe of is the bit before that, how you get the data and all the work you have to do to get there. And I think that's definitely why when we were having the conversation, I was like, for me, this is something that definitely needs to be outsourced to an expert, because there's no way I would be able to be disciplined enough to go through all of that process, that cycle that many times to get to a point where I've actually got real data I could use. I think that was probably my biggest takeaway. Is there anything that you're going to take from it and change in your business?
What I would say about that, Hayley, is that we're talking about, can we use this data or can we produce this data? But actually what we do have is we have all of the wins, all of the positive relationships that we have with customers where they have signed up, they have come over the line. I think for me, it's going back, I think we've got 35 customers, however many it is. Well, okay, have I ever put on my big boy pants and phoned them up and said, look, could I just ask you, what point on your journey were you when you met me? The story, what was your focus? What were the issues that you were encountering? I remember that we kind of covered them at the time in that initial sales discovery. But I think now that I've got to know those people over 6 months, a year, they'll probably be more open with me about where they actually were. Because of course, when we go into that first sales discussion, it is a negotiation, as opposed to, I'm going to tell you everything that I'm thinking and everything. So I think for me, it's to go back over the existing customers and see, okay, what patterns have we got in those 35? And also, it's something I'm always a bit worried about doing, is saying to a customer, where do you think you get our value from? Are we doing a good job? What do you do? And I've not had anybody yet say, Phil, you're doing a terrible job. Actually, we don't think it's very good. But it's quantifying and learning what your value is to people, not what you think your value is to people. And then where they were on the journey when they met you, not where you thought they were on the journey. So I think we could take that away. Is that something that you do, Hayley, or is it something that you think maybe outsource again?
No, I think having those conversations with clients is a really great thing to do. And again, it's one of those things that it's always advised by the gurus. This is a great place to start, but it's also one of those things that, again, it feels a little bit, I don't know if icky is the right word, but like putting yourself out there a little bit. It goes back to that vulnerability again, doesn't it? What if they do say, oh my God, no, you're rubbish. We're not happy with the service. Like that's but actually, if that was real, I'd want to know that, because if you know that you're doing a rubbish job, you can change it, can't you? If you don't know, you're in la la land. So, but yeah, I think it is something that we do when we do our client check-ins is we always ask, like, is there anything we can do differently to help you more, or anything that we should be doing, or anything that you don't feel supported in? And we do that as part of that that check-in conversation, which I suppose is along the same lines. It's just not as direct as going back and asking about where they were, you know, when they started working with us and what brought them to us. So it's definitely something I'm going to look at bringing into the business over the next few months as I have those client conversations. Because again, and we sort of had a brief conversation about this, and where I was like, but do you not think, Phil, that you would know what they would say? And you were like, well, Hayley, I did, but actually they told me other things as well. So it's been really interesting to see. So it is something I am going to be brave and do.
Yeah, for full transparency, we're filming this a little bit after the episode. And I have actually already called up 2 or 3 customers and asked them. And it has been really eye-opening why they chose us and what they feel our strengths are, what they feel we add to their business. And I think that that's a great point to say to everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found one thing to help you move your business forward.
And if you did, do us a favour, please share this episode with someone else who's on the same journey. And we'll see you next time on What One Thing.